Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marson, and today we're taking a look at Genesis chapter 34. Right? God has a plan to restore humanity. God has a plan to restore creation, and He's going to do that through blessing and promising to use Abraham and his descendants. Through him, all the families of the earth will be blessed. We've seen that Abraham's grandson Jacob, through all his schemes and deceptions, God has promised and has continued to use him to fulfill that purpose. And now, right, when Jacob finally kind of understands God's plan for his life, his sons are going to have to take up the mantle. And just like Jacob before him and just like Abraham before him, it's going to get off to a rough start. Remember how in those early chapters of Genesis, going up to and after the flood, we saw that escalation of sin, right? We saw it started with just eating the fruit, choosing your own knowledge of good and evil. And that spread to killing your brother, and that spread to Lamech's city and all the atrocities, that marrying multiple people and killing multiple people and abusing God's mercy. In that same way, we see Abraham. He was disobedient to God when he was afraid, and he cowered away from his problems and his fears. Jacob was also disobedient to God out of fear, but he responded to that with lies and deception. Now that's going to escalate to Jacob's sons, who are going to deceive and lie and scheme and plot, but they're going to do so not out of fear. They're not afraid of anybody. They are thirsty for revenge and retribution. Now this episode is going to deal with themes of sexual assault, but we are going to see through Jacob's sons how we should handle revenge and retribution when we want it and when it feels right, especially when a very violent crime has been committed against us and people we love. How should we respond to that? Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force. He was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young girl for a wife." Needless to say, this is horrific. Okay, this is a grievous sin done against Dinah and done against Jacob's brothers and Jacob and his family. And it's a sin that comes from what? It comes from a man's heart who sees something and wants it and doesn't think in God's wisdom in terms of every human being made in the image of God. He just sees what he wants and wants to take it. And he has the power to take it, and he does. That was all found back in chapter 3, right? That was all found with those themes of acting in your own wisdom and power and strength as opposed to what God has called you to do. And just like God said it would, it's been poison for society. It leads to all kinds of horrific and tragic acts of sexual violence and violence in general, and it still happens even today. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. For such a thing ought not to be done. Right, so the text explicitly agrees with how we're feeling right now. This ought not to be done. This is a bad thing. And let's remember why. Back in the Garden of Eden, the ideal, the thing we're trying to recover, men and women were all equally created in the image of God to rule over God's creation and to reflect His characteristics back to that creation. And the idea of sexual assault spits in the face of that ideal. But Hamor doesn't see it that way because he doesn't worship the one true God, right? He worships his own gods. He worships himself. He worships the empire he has built. His worldview is shaped by an us versus them mentality. He doesn't see everybody as created in the image of God. He sees that he's got to do everything in his power to protect himself, his family, and his city, and everyone else can bite it. And we see that through his opportunistic response to his son's heinous crime. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "If I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me, but give me the girl in marriage." Hamor's idea to rectify this evil situation, to rectify his son's heinous sin, is to marry Dinah to Shechem. In that way, the Hivites and the Israelites would join forces and become this large, big, rich, powerful family that would be able to oppress and harass their neighbors. They would be one of those mega kingdoms that we heard about back in chapter 14. They offer to pay anything for a dowry, even a lot of their property. But what's ironic is that God has already promised that property to the sons of Israel. But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. So Jacob's sons don't take the bait, which is good. They refuse to hand their sister over to this tyrant rapist, but instead of trusting in God's promise to give them that land, they try to act with deceit, just like their father before them. Once again, we see children repeating the same sins that their parents did. And it comes right as Jacob is beginning to stop deceiving people, right? His sons pick up the mantle immediately and start to deceive people too. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male of you will be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Right, so the deception is the sons of Jacob say that if all the men in Shechem get circumcised, they will unite and become one people. After all, circumcision was the sign of Abraham's covenant, right? And we can't be one people with these uncircumcised people who aren't called to the covenant, right? They even say that in doing so, the people of Shechem will become like the Israelites, right? And it reminds us of when the snake told Eve that eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil would make her like God. But they're both lies that are meant to trap people into death. And also notice how this story speaks to the failures of circumcision in and of itself, right? Anyone can be circumcised for any reason, even a reason so nefarious as stealing a woman to be your wife. The true reason behind circumcision in Genesis 17 was it to be a marker to Abraham and his descendants and all the people around them that they were different, that they were marked by the covenant and promise of God. And that faith in that promise and in that covenant is what resulted in true heart change. And circumcision was only an outward symbol of that internal faith. It's why Paul will say in Romans 2 that followers of Jesus are circumcised in their heart regardless of their ethnicity. But this deception makes sense to Hamor and Shechem, and they do it. They go through and they circumcise every male in their city. And notice why they do it in verse 23. "Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us." Right? So they see that God has blessed Israel with livestock and with abundance and with money. Right? And these were blessings from God. But the Shechemites want to hijack that for themselves. Shechem wants Dinah, right? And the Shechemites want all the things that God has blessed Israel and his sons with. And they're going to try and take it by any means necessary. Now, number one, God is not going to allow that to happen. But number two, Jacob's sons should be acting in accordance with God's will, and they do not in this scenario. Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city unawares, and they killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of their sword. They took Dinah from Shechem's house and went forth. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city because they had defiled their sister. Right? We see Simeon and Levi specifically are called out as orchestrating this whole plan. And they go through and kill all the men of the city. And here's the problem with this story. Hamor and Shechem are despicable, disgusting people. They deserve to die, right? They deserve to be judged. But the sons of Jacob should know that God is the judge of all the earth. He is a more righteous judge than them. He is a more perfect judge than them, and he will not let the wicked escape. He will judge the wicked, but they should be trusting in his judgments, not taking it into their own hands. Right? We saw that with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. God judges sin, and he does so harshly, and he does so perfectly, and he does so in a way that he doesn't swipe away the righteous with the wicked, right? Simeon and Levi take matters into their own hands, and because they're not perfect judges, right, they kill every male in the city. Well, hang on. Not every male in the city raped Dinah. Unlike God, because they are not all-powerful, because they are not perfect judges, They sweep away the innocent with the guilty, the righteous with the wicked. And look what else they do. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and that which was in the city and that which was in the field, and they captured and looted all their wealth and their little ones and their wives, even all that was in their houses. In response to Shechem and Hamor's scheme to steal Dinah and steal all the Israelites' possessions, Simeon and Levi scheme to steal all their women and all their possessions. It turns out that they don't have any specific moral qualms with theft and looting. Only when it happens to them do they have a problem with it. This is not the Eden ideal, and it just shows that we are not perfect judges, right? We're hypocrites by nature. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men, being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household." But they said, Simeon and Levi said, "Should he treat our sister as a harlot?" Jacob rebukes Simeon and Levi for their scheme. And he notes that this action is going to put a target on their backs to the rest of the Canaanites. And they don't have enough people to defend themselves. Remember how well Abraham got along with their neighbors. Even though God had promised to give all that land to Abraham and his descendants, Abraham never tried to take it by sword, right? He was just trusting in God's promise to him and got along really well with all his neighbors. Simeon and Levi's actions set up all this tension that's to come. And of course they say they raped our sister. But that doesn't give Simeon and Levi the right to judge and make war with whoever they want for whatever reason they want. Especially the innocent men of the city who had nothing to do with that sexual assault. So this story serves as a reminder that we live in a broken world. A world where sin and evil and atrocities still exist and still have an impact on us and our loved ones. However, Scripture is very clear that we are not to take retribution for that into our own hands. Why? Because we're imperfect judges, right? We sweep away the righteous with the wicked and the innocent with the guilty. Even when we try our hardest, even when we try to be good judges, inevitably we don't have the perfect moral character of God. We don't know the hearts of men, and we don't have infinite power to make perfectly, infinitely righteous judgments every single time. Inevitably, we will fail at trying to make good decisions. And of course, when we try to make ourselves judge, jury, and executioner, the likelihood that we become hypocrites is way higher. The likelihood that we turn a blind eye to our own sin while judging the people who commit the same sins as us, we can end up protecting wicked people that we love and condemn righteous people that we hate. And this whole story just goes to show why we should not be the end-all be-all when it comes to righteous judgments, when it comes to who gets into the new creation. We have to leave that up to God, and we have to be willing to accept God's judgments because He is the perfect judge. He does have the infinite power to make infinitely righteous moral judgments every single time. And when we act by His wisdom, when we trust in Him, we are more likely to agree with Him and make good judgments ourselves. And with that being said, this has been 1189. Thanks for watching. I'm Tyler Marston. See you tomorrow. God bless.